So my work is from a series called the Landscape of Matter series, which documents the geologic violence that is occurring between New Orleans and Venice, Louisiana, which is about a 100-mile stretch where the Mississippi River reaches the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay. Why did you choose that subject?
Well, I was curious to see what was at the end of the world, and unfortunately what I found was there was this sign, and then further down the road from this sign there was industry. And so I then began documenting between that sign and the plant matter that I was seeing in that area where everything is dying, the water is really toxic. And so the work that I do with Polaroid, because Polaroid is considered an integral film, I then submerged it into jars containing this found matter. And then the result was this work that you see behind me, which is basically like a call and response between myself and nature, just documenting the message that the earth is giving back to us through these images.
So, would you say it's kind of a little bit of a garbage in, garbage out kind of thing?
In a way, yes. I feel like, the earth has been responding to us for a long time, and we are feeding it a lot of garbage, and we're not thinking about the consequences in a way that can be visibly seen until it's too late. And so this is an attempt, just thinking about us as a blip on the earth's radar of documenting this experience and this time that we're in.
How do you think using artistic expression to relate our connection to the earth may be a little bit different from, say, scientific articles or the news articles that you might typically see?
So I think that an artistic vision and perspective provides like a complete, I think that when you have art on display that shows what's happening in the world, especially with climate change, it creates a different response because it is a feeling and because it is something that doesn't require language. You don't have to speak the same language to understand what's going on, and the connection that you can have, it takes you beyond what certain literature can involve. It's not, a bunch of academic terms and scientific terms that are harder to digest and understand. So I would say art makes it an easier digestible format for something that is really overwhelming.
Anything you want to add?
Just the work, I think, that is being displayed here in this exhibition speaks to a larger issue that a lot of us are afraid to confront. And so my hope is that through the works that are presented here, myself and all these other amazing artists, gives opportunity for us to actually begin to have more progressive conversations.
So right around the pandemic in 2020, I had received a grant from the National Performance Network. It was a documentary and storytelling fund grant. So I was supposed to begin a blog, and I did some writing, but I thought, let me use the YouTube channel I have and let me start making short films. And I created what I called cyber activism using my YouTube channel, making these short films, using my spoken word poems and the soundtracks, the music, because I have an incredible music collaborator. Audio Dali is his tag name. So this particular piece was from that series. It's called Video Cortaditos. Cortaditos is shorts, and Picante performance poems, picante meaning hot performance poem. And they come in hot because I have very charged spoken word, politically informed verses, and then the music that we use. So this particular piece deals, when I entered it into the Remember Earth for the open call, this deals with the actual immigrants who repair continuously after each storm. Because I think Gringolani gets very obsessed with the environmental concerns, and yet, who's rebuilding this city continuously? We saw Post Ida. There's another short film I'm working on with all the photographs that I took, because Post Ida, who was up on the roofs repairing? Latin American immigrants. On my neighborhood, on my block, there were Guatemalans, there were Mexican and Hondurans. I didn't have to go anywhere because my neighbors' roofs were damaged, so I began photographing them and interviewing them. So this is a piece that brings that up, that brings up the fact that the storm chasers, the people who are dealing with the work and repairing the city continuously, are Latin American immigrants who are often forgotten. We talk about the environment and we get concerned, but who are the people that are actually rebuilding and actually experiencing the hazard nature? Because as you saw during that time period, you rarely saw them up there with proper scaffolding, you know, they were given ropes if they were given that. I saw some folks up on a 2-story building near the Plessis Treme School where my little boy goes to grammar school. Up on a 2-story building, they didn't even have ropes. I was like, whoa. So it's an ode, an honor to the immigrant worker. And you see this image of me from a performance at the Ashe Cultural Arts Center, and we just imposed the image with the text. And then what I do, this is my short film, I highlight parts of the text that comes up, parts of the spoken word pieces.
As we move forward, that's part of the big discussion is the inequitable effects that climate crisis and climate change have on minority communities, immigrant communities, countries that maybe have less impact. Tell us your views on it.
Ooh, so I was born in Ecuador, in a sleazy port city of Ecuador. I grew up in New York, another sleazy port city, and I live in New Orleans, another sleazy port city, right? It's a theme in my life. But this city has a long Latin legacy. The unfortunate aspect is that post-Katrina, the city got redefined as just binary, and it's a deeply black city, but the white power structure is very strong. Who owns the plantation, right? So our communities are always affected, like we saw during COVID. It exposed everything we people of color already knew. We didn't have to know that we were going to be the first ones dying, that we didn't have the access to the health care, that everything else within that crisis and the fissure that it showed us was going to affect us, people of color, more so. And black and brown people here are experiencing a lot of brutality by white police. And the sad thing is that the undocumented immigrants, they don't report the crimes against them by the police because they're undocumented, they're afraid. So I think the fear quotient is one of the biggest problems that we have. And our people have to work, right? They have to work here, and they're the ones that are exposed to the hazardous nature. In addition to the fact that many of them can't afford to live in New Orleans proper. Some of them are living in La Place, and some of them in Chalmette or cities, our suburban cities. And like La Place got really buried very heavily during Ida last year. They got hit hard. So, and as we know, the African American communities, the lower ninth, it's still a shadow of itself, right? So our people are on the front lines, wherever we go. I mean, and that's the tragic aspect of the system here in the United States of amnesia that seduces its people to embrace forgetting who built New Orleans. It's been built by African enslaved people. And there's no French Quarter, it's the Spanish Quarter. It's the Spanish who rebuilt it after there were two fires that were 7 years apart in the late 1700s. But there are so many misnomers and lies. So I, as a performance artist, my job is to break through the propaganda and expose those lies. So COVID has revealed all of that. And I know that's a long response to such a question, but it's a heavy question. And we're gonna feel the brunt of it. Our communities may not be able to afford to be on the high ground, right? I mean, the story goes back to where the people in the 1920s, right, from uptown, had the lower ninth blown up, right, so that the water would hit there, and it also impacted white communities in Chalmette. I mean, so there's that lingering legacy that haunts this city, and it's a beautiful city. Everything we love about the city is predominantly African American, right? And then you have the Latin culture. We have so many more Latino restaurants, right, since the storm, but our people, their suffering goes unnoticed. So I, as an immigrant, and I've actually been working with the CAC for some 30 years now. In 1992, they presented my first solo. They commissioned my first solo. So I'm grateful to be part of this show. And I think it's a really good, diverse show to express something really haunting. Like the whole idea of Remember Earth with the question marks, like, wow, we're actually there.
Well, in this particular series, which these are titled Preservation, and I base the series on the Victorian era when the Victorian people kept curiosities and cliches, these glass domed things, and they loved ornate wallpaper. So I took that concept and applied it to what the future might look like on our planet. when we have to remember Earth, when things don't look like they do as it slowly fades away from us, especially in the Gulf South. So what I've portrayed here is marsh and swamp in a cloche, and on the wallpaper I have put the creatures, all of the things that rely on our coastal area for their survival. You know, birds and fish and reptiles and all of it, and humans and seafood, and that is slowly fading away as we fall into the Gulf. So